Thank you very much, Mario. Thank you for welcoming us here, and a particular thank to Mr. Lorenz and his team for hosting us in such a great place. Is this working, or I need to? It works? Okay. So I felt important to maybe illustrate, because we have all imagination, but when we travel, I think I loved what we said yesterday. Impressions and feelings is what you take away. And thank you, Mario, for as well sharing that we're all here to learn, and that is exactly my, I can say, position. When I go somewhere, I love to learn, and I think we all love to learn. So let me embark you on our journey, on where we come from as an international organization, specialized agency for tourism. Doesn't want, but it doesn't matter. We're going to find a solution. Okay. Yeah, maybe you have a better feel. Ah, yes. You see? You were afraid. So we here, and yes, we have here the third summit. It's growing. It's growing in importance. It's growing in a place where everybody wants to be, because, as we just said, Mallorca was one of the first world destinations. It has impulsed and inspired many other destinations, and it has really positioned tourism as a key sector for people. I think as well we have here properties and hotel chains that have expanded all over the world, bringing the wealth of knowledge and experience. And the world is watching Mallorca on how you are doing to get inspired too. So I think this is a perfect platform for exchange. I think what we want to do today, and because we come from a period of restriction, difficulties, and we are still facing them, we want to look at what is going to be the future. We want as well to look at exactly this lens of sustainability, which is related to people as well, because inclusivity and the value chain of the sector is important to consider. And then as well, we're looking at some new lens, pitching point on weather, architecture, and transport. We will have this during these 2 days, and I think quite interestingly addressed under another angle. But most importantly, I think that the big shift in tourism management is governance. And governance is more and more led by destinations, being their city, being their region, being their local authorities, and we can see that there is a growing capacity to unfold the beauty of tourism through the lens of destination. And of course, what we want is to look at actionable steps. Now, we are at a very interesting point, and September barometer, as you know, we produce a barometer 4 times a year, plus one edition at the end of the year to combine the whole year. Europe has only 1% less than in 2019, while some destinations are rocking beyond what they were in 2019 for many reasons, but that's where we are. Now, America's minus 3%, world minus 4% overall, and Asia Pacific 18%, because we know it was closed for a while. This is about the results worldwide, where we stand in terms of recovery, but as well, not only recovery, we know that man-made crises, which everybody is facing, have a huge impact as well on travel. And this is a way we stand when it comes to arrivals. We are, in terms of numbers, we're 1.3 billion, minus 11% globally. But what is interesting is that in revenue, we're growing. And this is exactly what the president said, we want value. And I think there is, there are many reasons for this increase, of course, elasticity of prices, costs, inflation, and so on. But still, it's interesting to say that revenue from tourism have grown beyond the number of tourism arrivals. And when it comes to the percentage of tourism in the world GDP, we're almost at the same level as 2019. Now, I just would like to recall to everyone that tourism is trade in services. Sometimes we tend to forget it, but why I'm saying this? Because we were, in 2019, the third export earning category in the world after fuels and chemicals. We dropped during the crisis to the 9th place, but we're back on the 5th. And now, food and automotive products are ahead of tourism. Maybe we will recover, but we know many reasons for that, because, again, price elasticity, cost of food production have grown, so there are many other reasons. But it's interesting to mention, because this is a key message as well at the governance level. Being it at the regional, the destination, but at the national level as well. It's very important for tourism ministers to kind of boldly feature that on the agenda of their governance. Now, this is my interpretation of our transformation, how we should be transforming beyond GDP. We cannot only look at the lens of economics. You all know that world GDP formula was calculated in 1944. So this is when the world decided to have an aligned, harmonized benchmark comparing growth. In 1998 and 2000, UN Tourism created the first statistical framework for measuring the GDP of tourism, which is called the Tourism Satellite Account. And the methodology of calculating tourism GDP was approved by the UN Statistical Commission, because we are the custodian of setting standards globally for tourism. That is our responsibility with the UN. And now, in February this year, we have the UN Statistical Commission that approved another framework that we have been working with all of you for 7 years, is the Measuring Sustainability of Tourism Statistical Framework, MST, known by everybody. I think yesterday was a hot topic in the discussion of the committee and the INSTO network. And this is the first statistical framework in the world beyond GDP. So we can be proud as a sector to be leading the way of having the first statistical framework beyond GDP. Why beyond GDP? Because we need to measure social impact and environment. So compare and make the balance with economy. Now, we evolve as well, and as Mario said, in a different as well framework, which is the Global 2030 Agenda. The 2030 Agenda and the 17 SDG, universally approved by all countries in the world, as well mention prosperity, people, and planet. Actually, all these frameworks mention the same, but said differently. So on the one is economy, society, and environment, prosperity, people, and planet. And what we are working on now is to translate the MST, the Measuring Sustainable Tourism indicators, applied to the private sector in having a first reporting framework for ESG, which is all listed company needs to report, with the Oxford University, and we are now pooling that into an actionable framework that could be aligned. And we will be then maybe able one day to really measure the impact of tourism from the industry lens. This is just like where we were in February this year with the approval of the MST. I think this is very important to underline. And as I said, UN Tourism is a specialist agency. We have 160 member states. But for tourism, when we became a UN agency in 2002, we were requested to be the custodian of standards and statistics for tourism worldwide. So we are serving 193 nations. In our working group, we have the US, the Canada, the Australia, everybody that is not a member today, but is participating. And this stats framework, as I explained, is connected to the private sector. So we have tourism GDP, beyond GDP, and the private sector. This is our roadmap. And this is the ambition we have. Hopefully, when we have an agreed set of indicators, we want to create an AI tool which is going to gather information, aggregate the results, so that we can have worldwide impact calculated on the impact of tourism. We had fantastic support, because all this is done not with our regular budget. We had great sponsors. So Oxford University was one, but then we had Booking, we had as well EasyJet Travel that has been supporting us on that journey, but more to come. Now here, this is the MST framework. While advancing on creating the Beyond GDP framework, we have done a lot of pilots. We have done pilots, interestingly, at a national focus and subnational focus. This is the terminology in the statistical world. It's not destination, it's subnational. But it is exactly destinations. And it's very interesting because we have been having a wide range of destinations which have tested MST and on different thematic and topics. And we can pool on that methodology to actually combine and transfer that as well to the Insto network. Here, this is the road ahead. We are now preparing the best practices and the compilation guide, which is going to be the reference book for the National Statistical Offices. This is something I forgot to say. When we have a framework approved in New York, it's not the tourism ministries. It's the National Statistical Offices. They are independent bodies at the country level, and the 193 and the 75 that were like, I can say the champions with us moving towards that have approved it. So it's a huge achievement. It's just not the sector, it's the global economy. And here, this compilation guide is going to be used by national statistical offices to integrate the indicators that are going to be measured at a national level when it comes to tourism. But then it can be drawn, of course, at a regional level. Here, yesterday, I think you had a very rich discussion with the INSTO, the International Network of Tourism Observatories, which are growing. They really provide a platform of exchange, and they provide a space for learning from each other, but as well accelerating action from each and every one. We have about 45 observatories so far, some still in the process of becoming observatories, and we had the last 3 years a growth of 50%. An incredible uptake. And we see that the world needs to be able to measure, to advance policies, but as well to inspire business models. Sorry. This is another framework of measurement that is related to the SDGs. This is for projects. When you implement a project, for the moment, we do not have kind of, I can say, an aligned benchmark to measure impact. This framework measures impact at all levels on the 17 SDGs. This is as well for the donors, but it's not the public here, so we'll not deep dive on that. And now the journey to 2030, as I said earlier, in the barometer, we do produce every 3 months the intelligence that is comparing countries' progress, results, receipt. But this is on the qualitative part, on the quantitative part. On the qualitative part, we have a network of about 400 experts worldwide, which are public and private sector, which we identify, and which are providing us qualitative information on the destination, on the work, and so on. So we have one key question that allows us to advance so that we can adapt the journey is what are the main factors waiting on recovery? So the main challenges. So higher transport and accommodation cost is one obstacle. It doesn't seem to bother you here in Mallorca, because I was here this summer, but it's really full. Economic environment, that's the global environment. Staff shortage, this is an issue for everyone. Extreme weather events. Airport congestion, flight delays and cancellation. This is really bothering the consumer. I think we need to think better of systems. And low consumer confidence. Now, here are the lesser important, the offensive in Ukraine, the Hamas-Israeli conflict, travel restriction, visa requirement, and other geopolitical risks. So this we have to bear in mind when we advance. Now, there is another big shift, change, and I can say opening is with the Summit of the Future that just happened in New York a month ago. The Summit of the Future, there was not such a big gathering and rethinking the multilateral system from the lens of the countries since the UN were created. And it is actually to rethink maybe multilateralism and what works and what doesn't work. We all know. I'm not going to go into the detail, but I think it is important. We are part of that, and I think that we need to look at that lens on the future. Peace is definitely one topic, key on the agenda, which we all need. And here, our Sustainable Development Department has been leading the way in preparing every 2 years a resolution on tourism. And this year, again, we have been sending out questionnaires and support to all countries. We need to lobby. We advanced. In 2022, we succeeded to include the word resilience. So just to change one word, it's very complicated, but we're there. And of course, my friend from Costa Rica, who hosted us about 2 months ago, as the chair of, with the minister, as the chair of our sustainability committee, which is a committee of the executive council of the governing body. We met there and rethinking tourism, changing a little bit the format, and having a forward-looking lens and look. And here, of course, we monitor policies. And I think it is interesting to see that coding of 18 tourism policies in 22, the result says that 93% of policies incorporate the term sustainability. But I think we still need to have more uptake on that when it comes to nature and when it comes to more detail. This is more for biodiversity, but... And 2 years ago in Canada, we launched a great alliance, a Nature Positive Tourism Alliance with the World Tourism and Travel Council and the World Sustainable Hospitality Alliance to really move on the agenda for biodiversity. I think this is a work in progress. We are going to launch, Dirk, I think in Colombia by the end of the month, a first interesting report which is going to be with a huge part on the private sector action as well, because I think everybody has a role to play. It's not only government that is responsible for biodiversity, but I think that properties are such as this one. It cares about its biodiversity, even though if it is exploited in rural land. Of course, we all know the climate imperative is really one of the elements that we need to look at. And therefore, for me, the translation of how we should be moving forward is really looking at creating a regenerative economy for tourism. That is, I think, trying to integrate all the dimensions from our perspective, from member states, from the trade, so all the partners, all the actors and stakeholders. We need to go into a net positive transition. And what does it mean? Of course, we need to look at emissions. Emissions are produced by tourism operations from all ends because the value chain is broad, being it the transport, being it hospitality, being it recreational activities. We need to look at those. But what you really want to know and to have in a target is really we want to increase, as a business, it's healthy, profits, competitiveness, sustainability, brand value, and jobs, but as well we want to reduce the carbon footprint, resource use, cost impact on climate, and inequality. And ultimately what we want to achieve is really to provide better livelihoods, green jobs for youth as well, healthy society, and preserving heritage. Prosperity, SMEs are at the heart of this transformation, looking at transforming what we save in carbon credit. Maybe, I mean, you may be not familiar with the discussion of UNFCCC discussions on carbon trading, on Article 6 whatsoever, but we are there and we're monitoring because we are pooling the capacity we have within the UN system to be trickled down to our stakeholders and partners. And the planet, regenerative nature, just what I mentioned earlier, this Nature Positive initiative, for example, is one. So we need to unlock regenerative economy. I think that some of the measures that are taking place here are part of it, but I think we need to look at that lens to decarbonize, regenerate, collaborate, measure, and finance. Now, For me, one of the key responses to this economic model is the One Planet Sustainable Tourism Program. This is an initiative that we are co-leading, we are leading, and it is under a bigger framework of the of UNEP, United Nations Environment Program. They are the lead of the One Planet. They have 5 programs. One of them is tourism. And in 2012, in Rio Plus 20, which is succeeding Johannesburg 2002 that Mario mentioned earlier, where first time tourism was mentioned, we succeeded to embed a program on tourism as part of the world global development. And I think here as well, this relates to the SDG 12 in the framework of the SDG, Sustainable Consumption and Production, and it is all about processes. This is enabling you to scale up capacity to accelerate the transition of a destination, a company, or a country into that. And this is where we embed our work on circularity, being it for plastic, for waste, for food, and other, and on climate. So this is really a very interesting framework. We are looking at all different ends. This is a little bit the stakeholders that are signatory of the Glasgow Declaration, which is the framework for climate action. We have about more than 800 signatories, and we have as well, we're monitoring the climate action plan, because if you are a signatory, you have 1 year to present a climate action plan. Of course, we know it's not inscribed in I can say in stone, because we're not prepared really to have climate action plans when it comes to tourism. It needs to be pulled with so many ends. Some countries are more prepared than others, because sometimes it's part of becoming a net zero destination or zero emission destination. But it is a work in progress, and this is a space we learn from each other. We have created a network of focal points on climate change in the organization for the first time. We have 60 countries which are part of it. Maybe we should be looking at the lens of having that in the INSTO, in the other networks that we have, so that destinations can benefit more, it can trickle down, but it is an interesting path. These are some of the publication and a series we have on policy dialogues on climate actions, where you can learn. And most importantly, another big achievement for us this year, it is the first time after 28 years that we are for the first time going to have a thematic discussion on tourism at the COP29 in Azerbaijan. So that is for us a milestone, because we are going to have for the first time a ministerial dialogue. We have so far 15 countries, 15 ministers, and 7 deputy ministers confirmed, but we will be having as well industry and destinations participating in 2 other events. So it's going to be a full day with a ministerial segment and 2 other segments. One is on mitigation, and the other one is on adaptation and finance. So it's quite interesting. It's going to be a kickoff. It's hopefully going to lead to next year COP in Brazil, in COP30, which is going to be again inscribed in the program. So we are entering now as part of a sector that can bring solutions, not only one that is having an impact. And this is another piece of work that is underway. Again, this is all work we are doing with mobilizing, I can say, partners to join us on that journey. We are going to produce a World Tourism Report. It's going to be the first flagship report of the organization. Having learned from so many years, we do not have one space where we can embed, on the one side, measuring performance with data, but as well aligning them with policies. And we want to align them with policies not only on sustainability as a whole, but really on all dimensions. So it's going to be an index. It's going to have every time a thematic focus, every 2 years, and it's going to really have an exercise on trends and foresights, and we will be calling upon you to contribute. So that's going to be, in a nutshell, it's going to address people, planet, and prosperity, and of course, governance. Another part that is for me, and I want to end with that, is a people-centered development. I think tourism is for people, using people, consuming people. It's all about people. And without people, there is no tourism. So basically, we have really the capacity to provide these beautiful lives and livelihoods, and looking at the lens of people. And our Secretary General in 2019, leading to 2020, the year of COVID, launched a concept and initiative to have the year 2020 as the year of rural tourism. And then COVID hit, and actually the only places we could go is nearby, like the countryside, the rural area, where we would be happy to be. Now, what we need to understand is globally, I mean, this is not in the region, but this is globally, 83% of people of poverty, people above poverty are living in rural area. And the gap of unemployment is 80% in rural area. The population, we know all that this is a huge problem, and the gap of education and skills. So yes, if we develop a sector more closer to the people and in this area, we definitely are able to provide livelihoods and have an economic diversification and retention. So this is a picture, I can say, of the flow. It's a huge program, and I wanted to share with you that every 2 years we do a survey on analyzing what we did well with the work and what the countries anticipate, what do they need that we focus on so that we can shape a program of work and a strategy. And the last 2 years, all our member states have put this initiative as the flagship, as the #1 initiative of the organization. So I really encourage you, because there is a competition on best tourism villages. I really recommend that all of you, because you all live in destinations, look at the lens of that and really push for your your villages to submit for the next edition. This is a snapshot on what's coming up. Interesting issues on urban tourism. We're going to the World Urban Forum that happens every 10 years in Egypt, in Cairo, because we work with UN Habitat, and we will be we're signing an agreement with UN Habitat and UNESCO, who deals with cities as well, on culture, but then as well livelihoods, and some interesting reports that are coming up. That's another space we have online that is born with the Indian presidency that now we reconducted at the G20 in Brazil, where we had as well a ministerial segment. This is a space where you can get inspired and sharing your stories and best practices. And this is as well the second time in the history of the organization that we have a one day at the UN General Assembly. During the presidency of this year, last year, it starts in September, so it's last year already, UN presidency. The president had 1 week of sustainability, and we succeeded to have 1 day for tourism. So we had about 30 ministers coming and joining us and speaking and debating there, and I think really it's important that we position the sector at the highest level. We were as well at the Small Island States Conference, which happened as well every 10 years, and it was in Antigua and Barbuda, because we know that islands are having very particular economies where the leakages are very, very, very high, being it not only for food, but as well for energy or water for some of them. So the cost and the retention of the wealth that is created by tourism, which is most of the time one of the key economic sector, is to be mitigated by a capacity to produce locally and to reduce the consumption in terms of circularity. So that was our advocate there. We were as well part of the Baku process in Baku this year on looking at the lens of tourism and peace, and tourism and climate, and the climate emergency, climate security, these type of issue. I'm drawing this because I think it's important that you see the diversity of endpoints where we are and how we can bring that to the benefit of the destinations. And finally, in the same time we were there for the approval of the UN Statistical Commission for the MST, Uzbekistan and Maldives proposed a resolution. They worked 3 months on that, and it was approved the same day in April. Yeah, I thought in February, but I don't know anymore. But it's there. The UN General Assembly approved 2027 as the International Year of Sustainable and Resilient Tourism. So we will be preparing already now, but next year, most importantly, to really unfold the year. And I invite you to join all the celebration. Thank you very much.